I think everybody else is on mute, but I have a question. This is Demita. What is the significance of 1964, out of curiosity?
We're just picking that because of the 50-year cutoff. So we're just, it's totally arbitrary. We're just picking it as, 50 years.
I thought something maybe majorly happened in 1964 to change ranching.
No, probably didn't. And there wasn't any other, really clear cutoff date, so we're just going with that arbitrary cutoff date.
Okay.
So, Astrid, I wonder if you're still there. Do you have any comment from the SHPO perspective about how this collaboration and this model for collaboration may work throughout the state or elsewhere in the state, at least? And I also wondered how involved the SHPO office was in the design of this project.
Sure. Well, the sister agency of the SHPO office, the State Historical Fund, is a funder of this project. So we've worked closely. I mean, it was certainly a methodology that Abby and Richard and company, put together and submitted as their grant application. But we have, been supporting them, every step of the way. So we're certainly well aware of the challenges and the methodologies as they evolved. And I just reviewed the draft of the MPDF recently, so.
So, who else has questions for Abby? This. Huh? April has one on here. Okay, April? Oh, did the Army pay for this? April wants to know.
No. The funding for the first phase was from State Historical Fund, from a Preserve America grant, and from a state grant from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, as well as also some contributions from the local ranching community. The second phase of the project then was been funded by the Historical Fund grant, as well as then a grant from CDOT for some of the interpretive materials, and then as well as some other local funders as well.
So, Abby, this is April again. Following up to that, so the Army involvement at the beginning of your presentation, that was something, this was not mitigation related to any of their efforts?
No, they were proposing to expand their maneuver site, but that had not yet occurred. And so they were not yet in the, not yet to the point of doing any kind of Section 106 or anything. So this was kind of more of an effort in the local community, to show what resources were there and why that expansion shouldn't happen.
So it was more of a proactive effort to get ahead of this project. And was there one leader who kind of brought this all together and spearheaded the effort, or it was just an alignment of forces at that particular time?
Well, one of the leaders who I think, if she's still on the conversation, was Rebecca Goodwin, who was involved with the local coalition that was opposed to expansion. So they Rebecca Goodwin was on their board, and she was one of the ones who was really involved within getting Colorado Preservation involved and kind of spearheading the survey effort.
Rebecca, would you like to add anything? Rebecca, are you there? Is there anything you'd like to add for what inspired you to get going with this? Maybe not.
May I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
Was there very much opposition to the survey?
No, we really didn't face much, but that was really because it was just a voluntary. And so it was only, we really only dealt with the ranchers who were kind of interested in the survey. And so we weren't, we had enough ranchers who were interested in participating through kind of collaboration with the local coalition that, we never really, had to kind of go after additional landowners because we had more than we kind of overextended our budget and kind of, we had more participation than we were expecting. And so we were kind of extending ourselves to try to, get all the ranchers who wanted to participate, to get them included. And so we didn't really, there were certainly, landowners who did not want to participate, but we didn't really have any interaction with them.
This is Esther, too, and I think Rebecca was really fundamental in that. She has a lot of personal and local contacts with those folks, and she really, went and sat with them and explained to them the process, and that really facilitated the enthusiasm for participation on the part of the ranchers.
Yeah, and we also had a couple really key local ranchers who we worked with early in the project and who were very supportive, and they kind of vouched to us to, their fellow ranchers, like, okay, we've worked with these people, they're okay, and they really helped kind of provide an entrance into the larger ranching community for us.
So the ranchers were very cooperative when you were at the survey stage. When it came to the nomination preparation, were they as enthusiastic about having their properties included in the nomination?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think definitely all of the ranchers would not necessarily have been open to that, but the ones that we approached and asked, would you be interested in a nomination, they were all open to it and have been, enthusiastic about, talking to us again and working with us to allow, additional site visits and everything, and have been, very engaged in the process. And I think they're really excited to kind of get recognition for what they thought is, their unique heritage, but which there really hasn't been much larger statewide attention to. So I think they're, kind of excited about, getting some attention to their region and their heritage, ranching heritage.
Yeah, that's really great, and it's really, I'm sure a key was the groundwork that you laid, that including Rebecca, to get that level of acceptance. Any other questions?
This is Rick McClure. I've got two questions, actually, if you don't mind. Great presentation. And the first question is, given that lack of historical documentation you had on the individual homesteads, can you talk a little bit about how you incorporated oral history and what role that played, and what you've done to preserve oral history, your techniques, that is?
Certainly. We've left out some sites. The ranchers, knew more about the sites than others. So some, we found it was very interesting. Like, often we would find the ranchers would name the pastures after the homesteaders. And so we'd be out and the rancher would tell us, oh, this is the Martinez pasture. And then when we'd go back and we'd look in the land records and find out, yes, it was the Martinez homestead. And so some of those kind of names survive in the landscape, pastures named after who had lived there previously. So some of them certainly have stories to tell, but even much more on a broader level, they could help us understand kind of, even if they didn't have stories of the specific homesteaders, they really understood the landscape and how ranching had changed through the years, and how cattle practices had, changed, and how the land had been used, and they could help us identify things like, yeah, you see that patch there, that's clearly where somebody tried to farm, and you can still tell, kind of where the land is scarred. And so they were certainly very helpful in, helping us understand, that kind of larger landscape evolution.
So were those interviews recorded and transcribed or preserved somewhere in the local community?
Some of them. We weren't thinking so much about formal oral histories when we were doing the initial survey, so the interviews we kind of did offhand during the survey process weren't preserved, but most of the ones that we had really great conversations with, we've gone back then and done more formal interviews. So those are still in the process of getting transcribed, and then there's going to be kind of a series of edited podcasts as well that Colorado Preservation is going to be producing to share those podcasts with, kind of make them make the interviews publicly accessible via podcast.
Great. And then my second question relates more to the boundary determination for your property and land use. So we see in a lot of cases here in the West areas where a ranch will be adjacent to federal lands, and the federal lands will be used as summer range for the rancher. And so I can almost see where you could connect the two. The cattle are being driven from one piece of property onto the federal lands, and you have summer camps that are used by wranglers and riders and stuff on the federal land. So did you have a situation like that there?
That definitely happens within our kind of larger area. The Comanche grasslands are within our area, so we certainly have ranchers who are grazing both on their own land and then on the grasslands. It just happens that the sites we're actually currently working on nominations for aren't ones that the ranchers utilize, the grasslands, but that certainly does happen within kind of the region.
Thanks.
John Mark, one other question. Did you find a lot of reuse with the material culture, everything from the previous?
I think that cut out. I only heard part of the question.
Excuse me. Did you find a lot of use by the farmers, the current farmers from the that you ran across?
Still spotty. So I think you're asking about reuse for the current ranchers of the material culture and sites. We definitely found some where some of the stone and stuff from the historic homestead complexes had been reused to build like features of their ranch headquarters, to build stone walls or barns or other aspects. We certainly found a lot of ranchers with collections of, bottles and other things they'd acquired from the site. Some of them, had restored bed frames and stuff that they had found on homesteading sites, and certainly some of them were reusing our, aspects of, homesteads that had corrals associated with them. Some of them had been then, maintained and extended by ranchers who are continuing to kind of use some of those homestead resources and, kind of use the homesteads as, cattle camps within their larger ranch.
Abby, question. So are these, with the involvement of the archaeologists, are these mostly being nominated under A and D?
They're being nominated under A, C, and D,
okay.
Most of them. Because we feel that there's enough, a lot of these, even though partial ruins, that there's enough architecture to really make a case study as being significant of a type and construction materials, because it is very unique, with some of the stone construction and adobe that we feel we're at least making an argument under significance for, kind of architectural type construction methods and workmanship.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Brad Barr.
Hi, Brad.
Hey, I thought this was really interesting, and I had a question. I was really fascinated to hear about this, the sort of the interdisciplinary walkthroughs of these sites and the notion of having a different set of eyes to sort of see the sites in a different kind of way. And I'm curious about whether you thought about, or whether it was, whether it might not be such a bad idea to incorporate somebody like a landscape ecologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would have been tremendously useful. Part of this, we were working on a tight budget, and we only had, so much project funding. But I think if we could have had, a landscape historian or, an agricultural historian with us as well, that would have been very useful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. I was waiting for Nancy to ask that one.